Welcome into another Friday edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Unlike previous Fridays, this is a game night. Purdue takes on number 2 Oregon under the lights at Ross-Ade Stadium. And for the Boilers, it's about building upon their first true signs of life this season, a heartbreaking but competitive overtime loss to Illinois last week. And for the Ducks, they'll be looking to avoid a letdown following a massive home win over Ohio State that may have made them the new Big Ten favorite and obviously put them in the catbird seat when it comes to making the college football playoff. On today's show, we'll discuss the matchup with Oregon and provide some analysis and historical perspective while also fitting in some hoops conversation. But first, Gold and Black Radio is proudly brought to you by Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. East End Grill and Ripple & Company, 2 distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. And the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Let's go ahead and welcome on Tom Dienhart into our conversation. And even though the Boilers are a heavy underdog in this game against Oregon, Tom, is there some renewed vigor and excitement from last week's performance that they can carry into tonight's game, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. The 4 previous games, Derek, left a lot to be desired, not just from an outcome standpoint, but really from an effort standpoint. And I guess that was really what was disconcerting to a lot of Boilermaker watchers. Was, again, just the missed tackles, the undisciplined play, the penalties. It did seem like things were getting better from week to week, and attention to detail was lacking. All that seemed to vanish in the final 30 minutes last Saturday in Champaign. The first half looked awfully familiar, didn't it? But they came to life, and you credit a revised offensive game plan that really finally clicked in the second half, really featuring Ryan Brown, his ability to run, and just sparked this offense, Derek. So, yeah, there is a little bit more pep in everybody's step, I think, coming into this ball game.
What are you expecting from Ryan Brown for an encore? Because, Dan Lanning and his staff will actually have some legitimate tape to go on, right, when it comes to planning to stop him and this Purdue offense after what they did, especially in the second half last week in Champaign.
Yeah, I think they're going to want to try to take away that run, try to contain him on his feet, because that's what he's best at, I think. Most people would agree. I think he's a legit 4.5 40 player. Most people tell me, and he certainly looks very fast. He did last Saturday in Champaign. He's a big guy too, Derek, about 6'4", 215. They're going to want to try to have him throw the football to beat him. I still think he's a work in progress there, obviously, but he did show a lot of signs last week. Even as a thrower, he got better and better as the game went along, Derek. I think he only had 9 yards passing at halftime and like 288 in the final 2 quarters and overtime. So, they're going to want to make him throw the football. We'll see what his counterpunch is. We'll see what the Purdue offense's counterpunch is. Because like you said, now they got film on these guys. And Oregon's going to scout the heck out of it and have their plan of action too.
And not that Illinois isn't good. They're fine. They're a solid team. Clearly, they're going to be a bowl team. But with Oregon being a true national contender, is this a little bit more of a, okay, let's see what you really got type game? Not only for Brown, but for Ryan Walters as a play caller?
Yeah, in some ways you kind of wish maybe a peer program was on deck here, like a Northwestern game was this week maybe, just to maybe give you a little better measuring stick of what we saw last week if indeed it is true. Even if last week wasn't a mirage, Derek, playing the number 2 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, I think they're going to make most teams look pretty bad. So, but nonetheless, even though this is a very strong opponent, we still will get some measuring stick on to if indeed what we saw last week does have some legs and some sustainability moving forward here, because we all know time's running out. Certainly looks like it could be a very bleak season, but it's all about trying to at least save some face here and show some promise marching through to the end of this schedule in November.
Dillon Gabriel, a Heisman frontrunner. I think he's second right now in the odds that I looked at earlier this morning. They have a big play threat. They have a lot of guys who can kind of get out and run, but Tez Johnson's among the national leaders in receptions at wideout. Jordan James has been one of the most productive running backs in the entire Big Ten, if not the entire country. I think it just follows the usual script for Oregon, right, Tom? Like everywhere you look, they have weapons and they have athletes.
Yeah, Evan Stewart's another good wideout they've got. Treshawn Holden. So, yeah, you mentioned the big one there, Tez Johnson. And then, of course, Dillon Gabriel. My goodness. Coming into the year, most considered him to probably be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. And he's done nothing really to diminish anybody's thoughts. He started his career at Central Florida, went to Oklahoma. Now he's in Eugene, and he's the straw that stirs the drink there, no doubt about it. And you do wonder a little bit, Derek, will Oregon have any bit of a letdown coming off a huge win, one of the biggest wins in school history last Saturday in Autzen Stadium, knocking off Ohio State? Maybe they will, but you got to think if they do, they'll probably gather themselves quickly here. And for Purdue, everybody asks me, Derek, is there a recipe? Is there a cocktail? Is there a mixture of any number of factors that could lead to Purdue shocking the nation? And I think there's a few things that would have to take place for us to even dream of Purdue knocking off the Oregon Ducks. Remember, they're a 28.5-point underdog. I think they have to do like Vanderbilt did against Alabama a couple of weeks ago. You got to shorten the game. Vandy held the ball for 42 minutes, so can Purdue control the ball, keep it away from that explosive Oregon offense. That would be key, I think. If you're Purdue, you're going to have to generate some takeaways, maybe 2 or 3 takeaways. And I think number 3, Derek, what you need a lot of times to pull off a stunning upset is you need to score at least one unconventional touchdown. That scoop and score on defense, or maybe a special teams touch. And you're going to have to score some touchdown outside of your offense typically. So who knows? I'm sure, Derek, you've heard this factoid already expressed throughout the course of the week. The last time the number 2 team in the country came to Ross-Ade Stadium, it got beat 49-20 by the Boilermakers. Of course, that was the Tyler Trent game, the famous Tyler Trent game in 2018 against the Buckeyes. So who knows, Derek? Every week we think, this team's got no shot, and we get shocked when I'm watching the scores scroll by. So I guess anything's possible, and Purdue has to take that mindset into this ball game.
Yeah, make the game-changing play, and also don't make the game-changing mistake, right? Catch the punts, catch the kickoffs, no pick sixes. I know it sounds simple, Tom, but literally every single week they're making the catastrophic mistake.
Yeah, don't beat yourself. We've seen muffed punts. Last week we saw a kickoff that wasn't fielded. We've seen red zone turnovers at Oregon State. So you're right. Don't beat yourself and play buttoned-up football. That's one thing Ryan Brown did. That may be, of all the great things he did last week, 415 yards of total offense. Maybe his best thing of all was, Derek, he didn't make a catastrophic mistake.
You're right.
For a guy making his very first college start, didn't have a turnover, really didn't make any egregious errors. So that was very impressive to do that on the road against a ranked team. So it's going to be fun to see what they have in this kid, right? And will we see Hudson Card, Derek? I don't know. Ryan Walters on Monday said his status was uncertain. And I did see him coming off the practice field last night. We went to practice. I'm not sure if that means he's cleared or not. Of course, he was in a concussion protocol. So we'll see if maybe number 1 is cleared, if he's suited up, Derek, and if he is, will he play? So something for the Oregon Ducks to think about too, of course.
Yeah, and you feel a little bit for Hudson Card because, look, I know he didn't cloak himself in glory in his starts, but I think a lot of things that happened were independent of him, i.e. not his fault. That said, I think Brown played so well in that game in Champaign, you almost have to give him another look, right, if you're Ryan Walters and the staff?
He said that. Ryan Walters basically said that on Monday when he spoke to the media, that he'd almost earned it. So, yeah, and Jason Simmons spoke on Monday too, and he basically said, you know what, if that was Hudson Card and we asked him to execute that same game plan, he probably would have had a similar result statistically as Ryan Brown. So this is to take nothing away from Hudson Card, an equally talented, maybe a more talented player than Ryan Brown. I guess the one thing is maybe Ryan Brown's the right quarterback at the right time for this team, Derek. You talk to coaches and players and you hear about Brown's juice and his energy and just a different personality, more of an outward, rah-rah, fiery guy, where Hudson's more of an understated guy. So you can win with all types of personalities, but like I said, Derek, maybe Ryan's persona, his personality, is the right one at the right time for this struggling program. And I do know this, Derek, his teammates are very much below him, and I think they rally around him, and I think they play hard for him too.
It'll be interesting to see what he does for an encore, that's for sure. Tom, you had the chance to catch up with the voice of the Ducks, Jerry Allen, for our point of view, and we're looking forward to that next, and we'll bring you back into our conversation when we start going around the Big Ten. Thanks as always.
Sounds good, buddy.
That's our friend Tom Dienhart, who will be back in the conversation with us. And we'll also, of course, welcome on Brian Neubert and Alan Karpick a little bit later on the show. Wanted to thank a couple more of our sponsors of Golden Black Radio, including Sand Valley Resort. Celebrate all that the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Experience everything from Thanksgiving dinner, curling and ice hockey, to ice fishing and snowshoeing, and even the restorative benefits of a guided cold plunge in the frozen lakes. Start planning your next winter getaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com. And we also want to welcome on board the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from all over the university, conducting cutting-edge research, and uncovers new ways to prevent and diagnose and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research, of course, saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And, of course, that one hits home because, as Tom mentioned, the last time number 2 at Ross-Ade Stadium, that was the famous Tyler Trent game in 2018, which was the epic upset over number 2 Ohio State. But let's get to that conversation with Jerry Allen. He is the voice of Oregon football. He joined Tom earlier this week, and here's this week's opponent view of the number 2 Ducks.
All right. Very pleased to have joining us Jerry Allen, the voice of Oregon Duck football. Of course, the Ducks are going to matriculate to West Lafayette for a Friday night game, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Number 2 team in the country. Jerry, let's jump right into the deep end, my friend. Kind of tell our viewers, our listeners, what to expect from this Oregon offense on Friday night.
Well, you're going to get a Dan Lanning team that plays with his personality. They have found a way to play, I think, physical football at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. That's what he likes. That's his style. They've got some great skill sets, positions in the wide receivers, 3 guys on the outside. Best tight end group that we've had in quite a while. And, of course, Dylan Gabriel, the transfer quarterback, who has just been managing this team with calmness and with confidence. An offense that has a running back in Jordan James that suddenly has discovered that he likes to run hard and pick up his feet, and he's suddenly becoming a much better back than he was in the first couple of ball games of the season. The offensive line is on the same page. First couple of games of the season, they weren't opening holes. They weren't protecting the quarterback. Dylan James got sacked a few times, and it didn't look like Oregon's offense was coming together. But by game 3, something started to happen, and then game 4, it happened at UCLA. They definitely had it together, and then certainly against Ohio State, they found a rhythm.
Yeah, big win, of course, for the Ducks last Saturday at Autzen Stadium. Okay, let's look at the other side of the ball real quick, Jerry. Kind of tell our viewers and listeners what to expect from that Oregon defense.
Well, Oregon's defense was without one of their key defenders. Jordan Birch was not available last week, and Birch was Oregon's kind of sack master, tackles for loss, disruptor. He was the guy coming off the edge that was making things happen, and he missed last week. So the Ducks had to depend on a couple of guys to step up. Tatum Tuiotti's one of those guys, an outside linebacker, an edge rusher. Jaden Moore stepped in behind Jordan Birch. Mateo Uyunglele was really good in this game. He seemed to be the guy that picked up the most slack, and Jamari Caldwell is just a big force. He's 6'1", 340. So Oregon's defensive line is pretty much done the same thing. They've kind of got the communication down. Dan Lanning likes to say, farm your farm, stay in your lanes, don't be doing other people's work. So these guys are really being disciplined and doing the things they're supposed to do to watch their gaps and be where they're supposed to be and be in the edge. Linebackers Jeffrey Bossa, Justin Jacobs, and Bryce Betcher, 3 really good bodies out there who can move. They've got speed. And then you've got Jabbar Muhammad, who is the transfer from Washington, Oklahoma State, then Washington, and Dante Manning and Nico Reed on the other side. And Tyshim Johnson, who transferred from Alabama a couple of years ago. The Ducks have, they think, their best defense that they've had in a while.
Interesting. Yeah, they're coming in loaded for bear, I'm sure. And heavy favorite, Jerry. People wonder, will Oregon suffer a letdown coming off that emotional win against Ohio State, coming across the country to play a Purdue team that's really struggling? How do you see this game playing out Friday night?
Well, I think it's a much more serious game now for Oregon, considering what Purdue did against Illinois. I think that got Oregon's attention. Well, I kind of look at, and I think we've talked about this a little bit in the first few days of practice, that Purdue may have been Oregon in those first 2 or 3 games that Oregon hadn't come together, hadn't quite figured it out. And it kind of looked like they figured it out. So all of a sudden, they've got Oregon's attention. And so I think it's going to be an interesting ball game that will come down to the trenches, where I think it always does. Yeah. Ducks didn't get sacked last week. Dillon didn't go down once. That's got to continue. And they got to get pressure on the quarterback. So this is all of a sudden a very different ball game than we looked at when this season started.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like you said, Purdue's got nothing to lose, obviously. And, Jerry, this will be the first time the number 2 ranked team has been in Ross-Ade Stadium since 2018. And, Jerry, that day, the Boilermakers upset the Ohio State Buckeyes 49-20 in what was been dubbed the Tyler Trent game. So I'm not saying it's a premonition, but I'm giving you a little history lesson to sort of decorate up what we got coming up on our palette here on our plate in very short order. So we appreciate you stopping by and dropping some Oregon Duck knowledge on us, Jerry.
Well, if it's happened before, it could happen again. I just know that when number 2 comes in, teams rise up and play a different level of football. And so we're expecting one wild and crazy game on Friday night. I think it's going to be fun. It's kids playing football. You never know what's going to happen.
It's going to be a blackout. Purdue's going to have special uniforms, special helmets. So, yeah, that'll be a great atmosphere, Jerry. Thanks.
Cool. You bet.
Thanks to Jerry Allen, the voice of Oregon football, for the opponent view for this week. Want to remind you, goldenblack.com is where you can find analysis, reports, and shows like this one. Knucklehead Central, you name it, you got it. Everything Golden Black at goldenblack.com. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button today and be a member of our team. We've also got the weather report for Under the Lights tonight at Ross-Ade Stadium from David Seipel of WLFI. And here's his weather report for this week against the Ducks.
Hello from News 18. I'm Storm Team 18 meteorologist David Seipel. The Boilermakers are taking on Oregon on a Friday night showdown with a kickoff time around 8 o'clock in the evening. If you plan on heading out to tailgate in the afternoon, high temperatures at 4 p.m. will be around 72 degrees with wall-to-wall sunny and blue skies. Winds will be out of the south at 5 to 8 miles per hour. Sunset is at 7:04 p.m. and temperatures will begin to fall quickly. Expect temperatures at kickoff to be around 60 degrees with clear skies and a light south-southeast wind. By the end of the game, temperatures will fall into the lower 50s and upper 40s. Overall, expect a fall-like evening with calm, cool, and quiet weather conditions for some Friday night lights at Ross-Ade Stadium. From News 18, I'm Storm Team 18 meteorologist David Seipel. Boiler up, hammer down.
Welcome back to Golden Black Radio Friday edition. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us as Purdue gears up for number 2 Ohio State. Let's welcome on Brian Neubert, another analyst and columnist for goldenblack.com, who, kind of like me, Brian just suffered from a very interesting, okay, they're going to lose. Oh, my God, they're going to win. Okay, they're going to lose game between the Yankees and Guardians. I know probably if you're watching this show, you're a Cubs fan or a Cardinals fan or a Reds fan, your teams are well out of it. So all you're cheering for now is Yankee Schadenfreude. So you probably don't care at all that Brian and I are currently kind of wallowing in our misery a little bit. But that was
people hate
even
Dodgers
as a Jets
too.
fan, like that was a tough one to take, wasn't it?
I didn't know I was just here to get made fun of. People hate the Dodgers too, right? The Dodgers are kind of the new Yankees where they buy everybody's best players. The Dodgers have Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Tyler Glasnow. They got the best player from Japan last year. They're what everyone used to hate about the Yankees. They are the most dislikable team in baseball.
Yeah, it's excuse me. It's funny because you hear a lot about like payroll and things like that, and then suddenly the Mets are like this plucky underdog story, and you're like, hey guys, you want to check out how much they're spending actually on their team this year, or how much dead money they've got on the books for guys that didn't pan out that they signed. But hey, that's a conversation maybe for a different show. Brian, I asked this to Tom on Tuesday's show, but I wanted to get your take because as optimistic as I try to lean, there's also, the realistic and somewhat pessimistic view of, that performance against Illinois. Is it a sign that things are turning around for this team, or was that merely just like lightning in a bottle, 1/2 fire drill, death rattle that won't be repeated?
Well, it's better than the alternative, but I don't think it was anything that really signals some sort of sea change in Purdue. I think it was 30 good minutes of football against an opponent that the coaching staff knew in and out. And I think Ryan Walters calling the plays on offense was one of the most random things of this very random season. But also probably worked as they intended for it to work, because Ryan Walters knows Illinois' defense because it's his defense. I'm not saying he invented it and he put it in there, and he deserves all the credit for what they've done. But he knows that defense, and he knows how to beat it. And he's been watching firsthand other people beating his defense at Purdue, and it's the same defense. So he did to Illinois what everybody's been doing to Purdue this year. I think he also knows their coaches very well. Probably knows how they think, probably knows their tendencies, their instincts, their whatever else it might be. And that probably gave them a little bit of an advantage. I think they kind of caught lightning in a bottle there for about 30 minutes, and that made that hell of a game. I'm not saying that to take anything away from the effort of the players who looked like they were cooked prior to Illinois. You know, the second halves against Notre Dame and Wisconsin were the worst part of this season to date. The record's one thing, but the non-competitiveness in losses was the worst part of all of this, if you ask me. So to see them, show a pulse was a very positive thing, but I don't know if it's an enduring pulse or not. I tend to agree. I tend to disagree that it would be something that would lead us to believe that they're going to completely change now. Remember, now's the hard part of the schedule. You're 1-5, whatever they are, and that was the easy part of the schedule. Now comes the hard part. So even if you are better, it may not matter.
Yeah, I mean, your last 6 games, and people may laugh at this, but with where we sit today, it's true. In your last 6 games, you have 4 playoff contenders. I mean, you have Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, IU. And say what you want about IU, where we sit right now, they are a playoff contender with where they are at 6-0 and ranked in the top 20. So you're right. I mean, it's weird. Nebraska and Illinois are good. Oregon State is okay, but the competition level is going to rise here.
3 top 5 teams. Assuming Ohio State can work its way back into that top 5 technically, but I don't think anyone would disagree they're a top 5 caliber team. So them, Oregon, Penn State, those are 3 games where, you're going to be a 3 touchdown underdog, and it's not going to be one of those things where people are underestimating or overestimating somebody. That's the nature of those games. That's the gravity of those mismatches. And, obviously Indiana's red hot. They have really, really got kind of like a Joe Taylor in 1997 at Purdue thing going here. And they're going to want blood, in that bucket game. I'm quite certain. Now, Illinois wanted blood too, and Illinois probably swung too hard and ended up striking out a little bit there in the second half. Yeah. But I think that, Purdue's obviously got a really, really uphill climb here to go the rest of the way, and they've not looked up to the challenge to date. And it kind of is what it is at this point. Is we're covering a team that's not very good, to be honest with you, and it's just, you don't want to say it's futile, but it's there's not a lot of reasons for hoping that for some sort of dramatic, sudden, shocking turnaround here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you hope for is that they can be competitive and show some fight, which is what they did in Champaign. Yeah. And but that's obviously a tough thing to do when you're a 4 touchdown underdog against the number 2 team in the country coming up here in tonight's game. I wanted to fit in a basketball question. You've been compiling preseason prospectusi.
I think it's
I'm not sure what the plural term is there on each end. Yeah, they're prospecti. Okay, great. On each individual Purdue player. And I wanted to talk about this week's with Cam Heide because I feel like he's a leap candidate. But I remember kind of going all in on past guys who showed flashes, especially in the tournament, like Aaron Wheeler, and it just kind of never came together for them. I'm not saying that Heidi's going to end up being Wheeler, but I wanted you to kind of ground me, Brian. What is a reasonable expectation for Cam here in year 3?
Yeah, I think he's, from a physical perspective, I think he kind of is what he is, which is pretty good. I mean, he's big and strong. He's athletic as hell. He's an above the rim guy. I just don't know if the skill set necessarily at this point in his career lends itself to that, like, 5-point a game to 15-point a game jump. I think that Purdue needs him to be a rebounder. They need him to be a versatile defender. They need him to be an energy guy. They need him to, to dunk, to make open threes, to be a dynamic guy. But I think he's sort of one of those opportunistic sort of players that, every team needs. It's going to come down to his energy. I think when they play him at the 4, rebounding. I don't think anybody's going to hunt him in switches defensively, which is a really nice luxury to have from your 4-man. But I think you saw him last year be kind of a plug-and-play defender. I think that's a big part of where he can fit into this team, but just also a transition finisher, a guy who can make an open 3, a guy who might be able to put on the move a little bit and try to hit in stride and, kind of crash to the rim when people help on Trey Kaufman-Renn, kind of stuff like that. I don't know if he's got that gigantic second-year leap in him like some other guys have in the past, but I think he's pretty good as is, and I think taking what he did last year and just projecting it over more minutes is going to make him a pretty productive, pretty important player.
Yeah, and I just think, he also, I think, can do some things athletically that you're just not used to seeing Purdue players do,
right.
Which makes you more excited, but you have to kind of, as I said, ground yourself. So I think that was a good grounding explanation. We'll welcome you back on to talk when we go around the Big Ten, Brian. Appreciate the insights as always.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Derek.
That's our pal Brian Neubert, columnist and analyst here at goldenblack.com and Golden Black Illustrated. Wanted to thank our friends at the Whitaker Inn. The Midwestern Oasis is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Proud sponsor here of Golden Black Radio. And our cleanup hitter on today's show, as always, for our historical perspective, is our friend Alan Karpick. Sorry, we got baseball in the brain, Alan. So
that's all right. And I don't feel sorry for you Yankees guys at all. So, but why would
anyone ever feel sorry for the Yankees, right? Why would no one should ever feel sorry for the Yankees. No. Everyone that is not a Yankee fan should clearly be rooting for Cleveland. That's what I would be doing.
I love Aaron Boone. We got a chance to see that's not Aaron Boone. I'm messing that up as well. But chance to see the Yankees and the Cubs this year, and they held the Cubs to 2 hits and just took care of business. So it's an impressive outfit, and that's what the playoffs are for. You get those ups and downs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's been exciting.
And Aaron Judge,
been a lot of
not Aaron Boone.
Sorry
about that.
Well, Aaron Boone had his moments too. That home run in the ALCS in 03 and all of that. We know a lot about Purdue versus number 1. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks ago about the win in South Bend against Notre Dame, and you go back and there are obviously a couple of others there, but they actually have a very interesting recent history against number 2s. We talked about the Tower Trent game, but also the upset in Iowa a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, was against the number 2 team when David Bell went off at Kinnick Stadium, right?
Right, 24-7 win in a game that it wasn't even close when the Hawkeyes were number 2. And you think about Jeff Brom winning 3 games. I think you kind of hit on this before against top 5 teams and beating Michigan State also in that same year. The only time Purdue's beaten 2 top 5 teams, I believe, in the same year. If that, it's only happened a time or 2. So, yes, all that sounds wonderful, but Purdue still got to play Oregon tomorrow as a 28-point underdog or whatever that number is, and that's historic in its own right, or near historic in its own right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Alan, do you know, the last I saw was 27.5.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they've ever been a larger home dog than that, but do you happen to know that?
I happen to, and that is that they were a 31-point underdog in Darrell Hazel's first year against Ohio State. I think at least going as back as far as we can, that was the biggest spread. Of course, Purdue got shut out to that one, 56-love in 2013. Urban Meyer ran out of players to play, I think, in that game, but it was a rough road for the Boilermakers. I think that the 30-point spread and I think that Griffin Hertigan does a number crunching, helps me do number crunching. And I had looked it up, was the biggest in the Big Ten in the last handful of years, with the exception of Ohio State, Indiana, which I believe last year or the year before ended up being was a 30-point spread. Indiana only lost that one 23-3. So it's a big spread. Let's just say that. And nobody's giving the Boilermakers a whole lot of chance tomorrow night.
I'm seeing 3 all-time meetings between the schools. I think fans will remember the home and home was recent enough, right? 2008 and 09, the Ralph Bolden game at Autzen, and then they played a very competitive game at Ross-Ade Stadium in Joe Tillers last year, both games that Oregon won. But did I see a random Mark Herman era game?
Yeah.
Oregon in there too?
Well, and this is what Purdue has to hope for, because I believe it was the week after the Boilermakers and Herman beat Notre Dame 28-22 in Ross-Ade. They come back, play Oregon. Oregon didn't get great till about 1994 or start to really jump up. They were a pretty pedestrian outfit at that time. And Purdue struggled in that game, but got the job done with a 14-7 win, I believe was the score. First look at that Oregon yellow, but they didn't have those uniforms like they did. Though when they came to Ross-Ade, I remember in 2008, I was disappointed because I didn't like they're all white for some reason. But it's always exciting to see what the Ducks are going to bring from a sartorial standpoint. They will do that tomorrow night as well. But yes, that game in 2008 too, a really competitive game, went to overtime. Purdue misses a field goal late, as I remember, a chance to win. Corey Sheets, I think first play from scrimmage goes about 80 yards for a touchdown, but that was a tough loss for Purdue, as it was in 2009 in Eugene.
Yeah, that Oregon program didn't change until Phil Knight started turning the faucet on, right?
That is correct. There's money, really talent. They go hand in hand. So there you go. Even back then.
Things really, really changed right after that. I looked at 1979 and they played, you mentioned Notre Dame and Oregon. They also played UCLA. I'm a little bit old school, but you kind of miss those old schedules, don't you? I mean, you would be crazy. It'd be suicide to do that now and schedule that way in the non-conference. And I think Purdue challenges themselves about as much as anybody else in the country with the slates that they've played the last couple of years. But you go back to those years and, man, it was just really a meat grinder.
Well, who would have thought that Notre Dame never made it to the Big Ten and Oregon and UCLA did? So there you go. How crazy is that?
That's funny how things work for sure. Wanted to thank once again the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future, and that's to defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's welcome back our buddies Brian Neubert to the stage as well as we go around the Big Ten, and also, of course, Tom Dienhart. And going around the Big Ten, guys, I was looking, and I actually think this Indiana-Nebraska game, they got Fox coming. It's a big noon kickoff. I'm actually glad that it's at 12. I like the fact that not every game is a night game anymore. Not that the Huskers are great, but this strikes me as Indiana's first real true test, because as good as they were and as much as they really dominated those teams, I mean, UCLA, Maryland, and Northwestern to me are three of the worst teams in the entire league. So I'm interested to see what Indiana does against Nebraska coming up here.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun atmosphere down there. It's supposed to be a sellout, right? And like you said, Derek, probably their first really legit test. So everybody's eager to see how the Hoosiers respond to we all know a Nebraska team that's sort of on the rise. We got to see Nebraska here in West Lafayette on September 28th, and good young quarterback, one of the best coaches in the Big Ten, I think, as well. So, yeah, this will tell us a lot about the Hoosiers, and if indeed the Huskers can stick a pin in their balloon and sort of bring them back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say Indiana has that schedule that you have to like. If you think in Indiana 11-1 or 10-1 when they play Purdue, with Washington and Michigan at home and Nebraska, obviously you have an interesting opportunity for the Hoosiers. And like Brian said earlier, I think it put it best on. It's a Joe Tiller-like season for them. Mm-hmm. Things are falling into place beautifully for Kurt Cignetti and that team.
Yeah, and all those years in the Big Ten East, maybe it was kind of time.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it was time for Indiana to have a
I'm
little
going to tell you one
an
thing, Derek. It's the same pity we would use for Yankees fans as for fans who are IU fans. There you go.
Perfect. Other game that I have my eye on, top 25 matchup, but both teams I think are moving towards out of the top 25. Michigan and Illinois, kind of a show me game. Tom, I have trouble kind of figuring. They both strike me as like 8-4 level football teams.
I can't believe I was looking. Michigan's given 3.5 points in Champaign. I thought Illini would be favored there, but it's going to be a fun game over there. This is the 100th anniversary of the game with Red Grange, I guess, and they're going to run these cool old throwback uniforms. So it'll be a fun atmosphere. I know they've been looking forward to this game for a long time over there, and yeah, it's a kind of game that Illinois. I think if you're going to get Michigan, this is the year to get them, right? You talk about a team that's really struggled under center at quarterback. I think they've already started 3 different quarterbacks up in Ann Arbor, so. Not a vintage Wolverine team we know. Lost a lot of players from last year. Lost their staff, of course, too. Really struggling offensively. And again, Luke Altmaier, Illinois, a nice offense, a big play offense, too. They can throw the football. So you're right there. That's probably the only other game in the Big Ten that really would make you sit up in your chair and pay some attention this weekend.
Tune in momentarily for. But Wisconsin, Northwestern, they could be 5-2 suddenly with a couple of blowouts under their belts, hosting Penn State. And that's a tough game. I mean, we saw Penn State struggle at USC, and Penn State, I think, still kind of has that MO that they're trying to overcome where, they go on the road and it's a tough game and they get punched in the mouth and they wilt. But I don't know. Not that I'm going to be dropping everything that I'm doing to watch Wisconsin and Northwestern, but Wisconsin is a team that suddenly is like kind of sort of back on my radar again.
Brian, I was going to say, is that because they beat Rutgers?
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I think Wisconsin's just kind of doing what Wisconsin does.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't grab attention. Blowouts and now Northwestern. You just all of a sudden look up in the end of October, they've got 5 or 6 wins. It's just Wisconsin's going to Wisconsin, and I don't think they're particularly good. Purdue made them look good, but I don't think they're particularly good. Northwestern's obviously not good at all. So I would expect Wisconsin to keep rolling here.
Guys, I just noticed Indiana's given 6.5 points against the Huskers. So, again, that's
a big number.
It is a big number.
Watch that. Maybe Iowa's on upset alert at Michigan State. Maybe, I don't know. Iowa's given 5.5, and in East Lansing against a 3-3 Michigan State team under Jonathan Smith. Hawkeyes been playing well. That's a kind of a sleepy road game you could walk into and maybe get ambushed by the Spartans. So we'll watch that.
And Iowa, to Brian's point, is kind of one of those teams like Wisconsin where you look up and suddenly they're like 5-2, and you're like, how is this team 5-2? And there they are, because they're always that way.
Brian, go ahead.
Jonathan Smith, a couple coaches ago at Michigan State, was John L. Smith.
Yeah, that's right.
When was the last time a school had 2 coaches by the same name within like 5 coaches of one another? I assume John L. Smith is Jonathan L. Smith, but maybe not. I don't know.
It could be Johan. I don't know. But no, I don't know. I think you're right.
It just dawned on me. Anyway, when random thoughts pop up on live
Brian Neubert
recordings. Indiana, I don't think they're going to put 40-something up on Nebraska. And now we're going to find out if Indiana can play, Big Ten football, if they can win without just rolling over somebody offensively. I think the teams they've played so far in the Big Ten have all been relative pushovers defensively. And I don't think Nebraska will be that way. So this will be a big test for Indiana. 6 is a big number because I don't see this being a game that's in the 40s. I see this being a game that's, low 30s, mid 20s, probably.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Like I said, you hate to talk too much IU football on here, but they're forcing us to do it, and
they've earned it though.
They've earned it, and they're sort of like we said. I think we all agree there's sort of a curiosity to this point, right? A curiosity. The schedule softness has been well documented, and now we're waiting for them to sink their teeth into some meaty games here. I know Washington's on deck. I think they have a game with I want to say Michigan.
Right, yeah.
Michigan
at home, yep.
Yeah, me and Alan were talking about that this week. So their heavy lifting's coming, right?
A little bit similar to what we went through with Kansas a couple years ago. Remember, I think College Gameday went out there when they were like 6-0, and it's because it's Kansas, right? When else are you talking about Kansas football, and when else talk about IU football? But man, they've really found something there, I think, with Kurt Cignetti, and there's a lot of momentum right now behind the program that I think is undeniable. But guys, appreciate it, and looking forward to Ross-Ade under the lights. Number 2 Ducks coming in. Hopefully it's a competitive one and a good one, and maybe not as stressful as last week's game in Champaign, but we'll see. Thanks so much for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
That's Tom Dienhart, Brian Neubert, and Alan Karpick, and that's our show, Gold and Black Radio, this Friday edition. Thanks so much for joining us. Want to give a final thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to the Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn, the Midwestern oasis, perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. The Sand Valley Resort. Celebrate all that the wilderness provides this fall and winter at Sand Valley. Start planning your next winter getaway by visiting sandvalleypursuits.com. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And, of course, don't forget to become a subscriber right here at goldenblack.com. We'll have a full game recap with Carm and the rest of the crew following Purdue and Oregon. The next time you'll see me is Tuesday. But thanks so much for tuning in to this Friday edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm Derek Schultz. Enjoy the game on Friday, and we'll see you next time.